This is the first interview for Fox Channel, and today we're going to be talking about remote viewing. And for our audience, we're talking to Greg Lall, who's in Idaho, and it's now evening his time, and it's morning my time over here in Asia. And today we're going to talk about remote viewing and out-of-body experiences. I have to say these topics really interest me. They're fascinating, and I think the world is now waking up that there's really something here. So I'm looking forward to this chat. Greg, I wonder if you could give us a kind of definition of remote viewing and also astral projection.
Let's start with the definition of what remote viewing is and where remote viewing originally came from, where the idea really evolved and became the science it is today, and evolved the esoteric arts or the psychic sciences, whatever you want to call it. Remote viewing is the one science that's been proven through scientific observation enough to call it a provable theory.
Excellent.
So what remote viewing is really it's going inside, quieting down the mind, and accessing information that through the mind's eye. Where this originally started from was the government actually started doing research on it, on a project called Project Stargate. They were interested in looking into the whole remote viewing thing. They found out that there was enough there that they started actually funding it as a government program. And during the first Iraq war, when they were using all of the missiles to track down and hit Saddam Hussein, the way they were getting their targets was actually through remote viewing. They're having remote viewers sitting in a room, getting targets to know where exactly to place their bomb. And that's declassified information, and that's one use we know that the government actually did with remote viewing.
Well, a lot of the original remote viewers have now left the military and have gone out on their own in various private ways. Do you think the U.S. government is still doing this?
Absolutely, but we don't know that for sure. Back in the late 90s, this information became public. The government was very, very embarrassed and shut down that program. But knowing intelligence and the NSA, it's almost a guaranteed thing that they start up another program that would be somewhere black that you couldn't see it.
Interesting.
So I don't have any proof that remote viewing is still going on in the government, but I would be very, very surprised if it wasn't from the success they actually had from remote viewers.
Okay. And what's the difference between remote viewing and out-of-body experiences?
Out-of-body experiences, or astral projection, or near-death experiences are all talking about exactly the same thing. And that is the physical consciousness leaves the body, or the soul leaves the body, or leaves the body. Whatever wording you want to use. A near-death experience is when the soul leaves the body during a time of great stress or the body is close to death. Out-of-body experiences or astral projection can be done without that dramatic death experience. You can learn. Some people naturally have the ability and talent to do it just on their own without any learning. A lot of people can learn, or most people can learn how to do this so they can actually have that experience.
And how about you? How did you first get involved in this?
I read about it at a very, very young age and became very, very interested in the subject. I read every book that I could find. Back when I was growing up, it was still a fairly new topic, and there wasn't as much research and information about it, and certainly not the technology that's available now to alter people's states of consciousness. But I found the one place on Earth that was really researching this particular topic, which is called the Monroe Institute, and was developing technology to alter people's state of awareness to really allow for people to get into that just perfect state of being that allowed you to leave your body.
What drove you to contact him? I mean, did you have a particular reason to contact Monroe?
How I first became interested in it was I was reading every book that I could ever find on the subject of out-of-body travel or astral projection. And Robert Monroe is kind of one of the pioneers in the field. You could almost call him the father of the out-of-body experience. He was the one who coined the term out-of-body experience. So reading his books, I became fascinated with the possibility that this could be learned, and then began experimenting and trying it on my own, um, which I had some limited success at the very beginning, but made a kind of the worst mistake I could possibly make. And it took about 7 years and finally a trip to the Monroe Institute to leave my body for the first time.
So hold on, you said you made a terrible mistake. Can you explain?
When you're first experimenting and going out of body, it's not extremely difficult for you to actually go out of body within 2 weeks of just practicing techniques. Um, One of the problems you can run into, though, is your body a lot of the time will associate from past lives you leaving your body as approaching death or as a death experience. So if you don't go very, very slowly, one step at a time, you can run into that extreme fear the body has that you're actually dying.
Hmm.
And if you ram straight into that wall, it can set you back for years and years and years, trying to overcome the fear that the body has that when you're going out of body, you're actually dying. So even though the conscious mind knows that you're not dying, your body is terrified that the soul is leaving the body, it must be dying. So the body ends up fighting what you're trying to achieve as a.
So one of the reasons you wanted to contact Monroe had to do with getting over the fear and having a sort of guide to go into this experience?
Exactly. Getting over that fear of death is the number one objective that has to be overcome for you really to have any success at traveling out of body.
So what does Monroe do to give people confidence that they're going to be able to go and come back safely?
Really, the secret is just to not skip any steps and to really map the state of awareness and the state of being from normal awakening awareness all the way to going out of body, which is done at the very, very edge of how far you can go into delta type wave activity.
So,
So you,
I hear people who do remote viewing out of body talk about these different states. Um, for the layman here, and I'm one of those, can you talk about, what these states are? I mean, what happens when we leave this everyday awareness?
we naturally go into different states that our brains are in, and science has classified those into four different states the brain can be in. One is beta activity, the next is alpha activity, that going a little deeper is theta activity, and the deepest is delta activity. From delta all the way into mid alpha, normally you'd not go into those brain waves
Hmm.
unless you're actually unconscious and asleep.
Hmm.
And really, the trick to consciously and having control over out of body experiences is learning how to go into those different brain waves and still be conscious instead of being unconscious. It's the same thing that Buddhist monks or Zen monks or anyone who spent years and years and years of meditation is trying to achieve. And what they found with technology is using audio technology, you can actually sync up the audio technology with your brainwaves and teach yourself how to go into those deep states of awareness without spending 30 years in meditation, but using technology instead. So it's a very, very nice, powerful shortcut.
Okay. And Robert talks about Robert Monroe and his institute. By the way, was he actually there because I think he's passed away, hasn't he?
He did. He passed away in the mid 90s, and I didn't actually make it to the Monroe Institute until 4 years after he died, unfortunately. So I never got a chance to meet him, but his daughter was running the institute,
I see.
and
Yeah.
and she's passed away as well.
Oh,
But
that's
the
sad.
institute has still stayed on the same course that it was.
Okay. So when you go to the institute, you're surrounded by dozens of people, hundreds of people?
The maximum that can go through a course is about 25. So between 20 and 25 people are actually going through the course.
Okay.
And generally they do week-long courses.
So you were there for a week?
I was there for a week, right?
Okay. And was it difficult to learn?
It wasn't difficult to learn, but it was definitely a far out there experience. As you're going through these different, as you're learning how to go deeper and deeper and deeper into your own states of consciousness, it definitely changes your awareness. So it is a lot easier to, rather than go through your day-to-day activity and practice this either in the morning or at night for like an hour or two, it's really hard to release that stress from the day and really focus in on that 1 hour when you're only doing it for 1 hour. So having an entire week where you can just put your entire life on hold, put it away, and really focus on it is a really successful format. Not that it can't be done in normal reality, it just takes a lot longer to really make the same amount of progress.
And so after a week, were you changed?
The first time, I actually didn't go out of body. The first week I went there, I had to go there the second week to actually go out of body. But from 1 week, the change was, it's really hard to describe how much of a change happened.
So it was really
the first time I went there, I was actually very, very suspicious that they were spiking their food with hallucinogens. Because my change in perception had changed so much. The leaves on the trees had gotten much more vibrant and vivid. It's just really hard to describe how much of a change that was going on.
And was that a persistent thing? I mean, has it stayed with you?
No, it's something that once you're kind of out of that vibration and frequency, after about 2 weeks, you're able to ground back into physical reality. You're just moving up vibrationally so much that all of your perceptions were altered.
Interesting. So what results have you had? I mean, what have you actually done with this technique?
Most of my results have always been geared towards spiritual growth, and there has been a tremendous amount of spiritual growth from moving out of body and being able to start to explore beyond physical reality.
We talked about this.
Excuse me.
No problem. We talked about this briefly before, and we got into the concepts of 3D and 4D. And I thought that was pretty interesting. So can you talk about that?
The first concept, what most people would call 4D, is moving into, there's a lot of words to describe it, but basically the astral plane, which is simply what happens when you either move out of body or die, or even have a very strong drug experience. You're moving very close to that astral plane. And the astral plane is not that far separated from 3D reality. Everywhere you go, you're still looking at things that are very much geared towards being alive, living 3D objects, but you're not bound by the same rules of physics that you would be here. So flying is very, very easy. You can walk through a physical door. All of those things are possible on the astral plane. The astral plane is just one of many, many dimensions that continue to go up as you raise your frequency vibrationally.
So when people have an experience like this and come back to ordinary life, presumably one of the most common effects is people no longer fear death because they see what it's like. They know they survive, or their spirit survives beyond their physical death.
That is, for most people, it takes several experiences to really get that profound sense. But once you get that profound message that you're more than your physical body, that there really is life after death. It's not a belief, it's an actual knowing. And that can only be done through personal experience. No matter how many religions or how many belief systems you've ever been that say there's something beyond death, it's still just taking someone else's word for it, which really does not get rid of that underlying fear of actual death. So to actually remove that is probably the most profound shift that's really possible in spiritual growth or in your normal evolutionary development, I believe.
Yeah, well, it sounds very powerful. I mean, I'm wondering what you think would happen to our country and the planet if 1% or 5% or some number like that, a large percent, a growing percent, actually had this experience, and it started to affect the way we live in the world and we make policy and politics and so forth. Do you think it would be a profound change?
When you stop looking at yourself as merely a physical vessel and a physical being, as nothing more than a piece of meat that's walking around in a meat suit, when you really move beyond that and realize that we're here for a purpose, we're here for a reason, we're here to experience, the shift in your belief system, in what you want to accomplish, it's profound enough that it's kind of hard to put into words and to describe how meaningful a shift that is.
And sorry, I interrupted you. Anyway,
No, you're
yeah,
fine.
we've got a delay here, which is why we're getting this funny pause. I think you had something else to say.
As far as politics, as far as what we're actually driven to, I mean, a lot of our reality is based off of competition-based thinking,
Hmm.
which is really based off of we're nothing more than physical bodies, and the only way to achieve anything on this planet is to get more and more and more money. All of that realism really starts to fade away and shift away when you realize that this is just a really small part of our experience as beings.
Hmm. Well,
So I think there would be a huge change in the world if we could all realize that we're more than just physical body, and we're for more than just our stuff.
absolutely. Um, what about things like medicine? Do you see any impact on, people who do remote viewing? Do they have any ability to cure themselves?
We all are aware of the placebo effect. It's one of the most powerful things that happens in medicine, and it's immediately dismissed and thrown out the window. But it's the absolute baseline and standard that we measure all medicine. How much is the placebo? If it gets rid of the placebo effect, then maybe the medicine actually has some use. But the one thing that medicine has always ignored is how powerful the mind is in manifesting symptoms and in healing the body. So just from the placebo effect, we know that people are immensely powerful in what they can create and what they can cure in their body. And that really is not explored in medicine. It's thrown away, and it's probably the most important aspect of medicine as far as healing the body is the fact that the mind can have such a huge effect on physical healing. So that's not quite getting into remote viewing and astral projection, but really understanding that belief has such a profound effect in reality is really a really good lesson that could definitely be implemented into modern medicine.
Interesting. I mean, I'm sort of thinking the idea that if there were a lot of remote viewers in our society, we might be able to change our paradigm of medicine, um, and open it up to some new ideas and some new thinking, which will get us out of a pretty desperate trap we're in now, financial and other trap, which to me sounds like it's driven by the pharmaceutical companies and traditional medicine. But that's getting a little off subject, so I'll pull it back. Do you see people using remote viewing and astral projection?
It definitely is going in. I mean, there are definitely different modalities. Remote viewing is a tool. It's a very, very specific tool that, if you can find the right application for it, can be very, very useful. For gaining information that you can't really gain through your normal physical waking awareness, remote viewing is perfect for it. Doesn't matter what you're looking through in time. Time has no bearing on what you're viewing, what you're doing in remote viewing. So you're able to just as easily look at something from 1,000 years ago as from 100 years into the future.
Fascinating.
Um,
Well,
uh,
sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I want you to finish your thought.
Astral projection, on the other hand, it is being able to go anywhere in time, anywhere on this planet, anywhere off the planet, and be there in a state that you are completely immortal and cannot be damaged in any way. So remote viewing is or astral projection is a much more powerful tool, but it's also a lot harder to learn control and mastery over. Remote viewing you can pick up in a few hours of taking a lecture, where astral projection I've been working on for 20 years and still have a long ways to go before I call myself astral projection.
You know, Greg, I wanted to ask you that Dr. Richard Allen Miller has said in a couple of interviews and to me privately that he thinks remote viewing could be a bit dangerous. And his explanation is that although you think you're looking at some things, there's actually, it's looking back at you. So you are actually opening yourself up to influence when you open up your mind in that way. Do you have any comments on that?
The best way I would describe it is it's just another sense. And we have a lot more senses that are possible besides the 5 physical senses that we learned. One sense is the sense of being able to sense energy or feel energy. It's a completely natural and normal sense, and the only reason it hasn't been developed is people haven't focused on it and don't know how to focus on it. Once you learn how to focus on it, it's actually really easy to be able to feel energy and feel the way that energy is moving around your body. Remote viewing is another sense. It's just another sense that we have. As far as it being dangerous, I would say if you took someone who had been blind their entire life because they've been wearing a blindfold, and you suddenly took that blindfold off of them, would it be dangerous to give vision to someone who is blind? There are some small risks with that, but it's just a natural sense. It's just a natural ability that all of us have.
Okay, so if someone wanted to get started on this, what should they do?
On remote viewing, there's been good books that have been written. And remote viewing is a very, very structured format. So there's lots of good books and courses out there. One recommendation I definitely would make is adding Monroe Institute technology, which is HemiSync or binaural beat technology, into that. The idea of remote viewing and kind of the trick is to get into that perfect state of consciousness, which is a very, very relaxed hypnotic state, to be able to access those parts of your natural third eye or inner mind, looking to different places. If you're very, very relaxed and in that perfect place, remote viewing comes very easily and naturally. So adding what's written in the courses and what's written in the books, along with binaural beat HemiSync technology, is just a really easy way to have success at that on your first
And
go.
how do people get a hold of that?
HemiSync technology is, there's been several groups that have taken Monroe Institute technology and played with it, done different things with it. So besides the Monroe Institute, just typing in HemiSync and doing a simple HemiSync Google search will bring up all sorts of what products are available out there. It's not very expensive. All you need is headphones to listen to HemiSync technology. And HemiSync has applications everywhere from being able to study and keep in that perfect state of studying, to athletes have been using it to keep themselves in that peak athletic state of mind. Really, your state of mind determines how successful you are at any physical action you have. So learning how to control those brain waves and that state of mind really gives you a large potential for success in anything that you do. Learning to train the mind is so important at having success in physical reality.
Yeah, one thing I want to say about that, just to clarify, is HemiSync means hemisphere synchronization, I think, doesn't it? I mean, right in the brain, to synchronize in a single point, somewhere like the third eye.
Really, yeah, most of the time we're either using parts of our left brain or we're using parts of our right brain, and we switch back and forth all the time. hemispheric synchronization really is getting those two parts of the mind to work together in sync. So you're not using one or the other, you're forcing both parts of the brain to work together, which is really the optimal state for just about anything you'd ever want to do, but especially meditation and learning to go deeper and deeper and deeper inside yourself.
So I heard a podcast very recently, I think it was yesterday, in fact. Someone said that hemisync frequencies used by Monroe were very suitable for one side of the brain, left side or right side, and not so suitable for people who are mainly so left brain people found it great, and the frequencies weren't quite right for right brain people. Have you heard this comment before?
What I found, I've been through a lot of metaphysical classes or New Age classes and things like that, and you always tend to find throughout all of your life that people tend to be either extremely left-brained, which is not very accurate, but we'll use it for simplicity's sake, or very, very right-brained. The more left-brained you are, the more logical you are, but the more you really have getting in touch with your feelings, your emotions, your artistic side. And the same with right-brained people. Right-brained people are very, very artistic, but being grounded and down to earth and actually having that logical based part of their side of their mind is just very, very foreign to them. If you go into college, you'll either find math people or you find English people, but the two mix like oil and water. So what hemisync is trying to do is take both parts of your brain and put those together. And a lot of people, I wouldn't say more brain people have trouble with this or more right brain people have trouble with this, but a lot of people start feeling a little bit uncomfortable accessing parts of their personality and their mind that they've never really accessed before, and having those two work together. I would say it's definitely the optimal state of thinking about any problem, instead of looking at it from one side or the other, to combine the two and look at it as a whole brain. But some people do find it a little bit uncomfortable to really start using the side of their brain that they've never really focused on.
Do you find that you want to use a meditation technique or hemisync to tune your brain, to balance it before you make important decisions?
Not so much. It's something that's not a crutch, but it's a tool. So once you've learned it, it's not something that you have to keep learning over and over and over again. It's kind of like opening a door to the mind, but once you open that particular door, you don't need to spend an enormous amount of time reopening the door. It's learning a new skill set. So once you've learned that skill set, just like algebra, you don't need to go back and learn algebra every day, but you can actually access that on your own without using a crutch or a tool.
So, for example, if somebody was going to buy a house or decide which university to go to, they're not familiar with remote viewing. Is there anything you can suggest for them to put their mind to a state where they'll make a better decision?
I would say if on making any big decision in life, we have two approaches you can take. Again, you can take the logical approach, which, let's say you're buying a house. You can go over the pros and the cons and weigh those out and look at it all from a logical point of view. And I would say you'd be missing half the picture. On the other hand, there's people who would go in and they don't care about the money. They don't care how many bathrooms it has or how far away it is from town. They just like the way it feels. It feels like it's a very good environment. They like the sunsets that they'll see from the porch. And I would say it's not that either of those two approaches are wrong. It's just being able to put those two together. So you're not invalidating one to look completely at the other, or invalidating the other to look completely at one. But putting those two together is probably the best state to make any decision.
It's a little bit like
to really weigh how you feel about the decision, but also to look at the logic, and does this decision make sense even if it feels good?
It's a little bit like a couple that works really well together, and it's not always this way, but the husband might be making a lot of the analytical thinking on it, and the wife might look at it emotionally, And if they're both happy, they probably have a much better decision.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, Greg, this has been really good. I really enjoyed it. And maybe you'll come back and visit with us again.
I hope I
That
can
would
do
be
another
great.
interview. And I hope your audience finds this useful
Well,
in
it's
some
been,
way. If not useful, at least entertaining.
yes, it has been. Well, thanks very much. And we'll see how it goes. And we'll look forward to the next time. Bye for now.
Alrighty.